I always thought that moving into a charming old house would be like living inside a warm, nostalgic memory. A dream come true. But sometimes dreams hide dark secrets that lurk in the unlikeliest of places. I never imagined that my new home with its creaking floors and subtle whispers in the dark would become a labyrinth of questions that would change my life forever. From the moment I stepped through the front door, I knew this house was special. It wasn't just the vintage hardwood floors or the antique-like fixtures. It was the way the sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting golden streaks across the floor like something out of a dream. I'd always imagined finding a place that felt like it had a soul, and this one did. Not in a haunted way, but in a warm, lived-in kind of way, like it had been waiting for me. During my first few days, I noticed all the little quirks that made it unique. The gentle groans of the wood at night, the occasional flicker of a light, nothing alarming, just reminders of the home's character. I found comfort in those sounds, as if the house was stretching its limbs after years of slumber, settling in with me. One rainy evening, while I was huddled on my couch with an old book, I caught sight of something out of the corner of my eye. A faint, almost imperceptible movement along the living room wall. I decided to investigate, and as I inched closer, I was convinced it was just a trick of the light, but I reached out and gently tapped the wall, expecting a dull, echoey sound from behind. Instead, I heard something unusual. A very faint, almost rhythmic thumping that seemed like it was answering back. Fueled by curiosity and an overwhelming sense of dread, I grabbed my flashlight and ventured into the narrow hallway. The corridor felt colder than before, and its shadows deeper and more menacing than I remembered. When I shone the light on the wall, a tiny crack appeared, and behind it a narrow crevice seemed to pulse with a life of its own. In that moment, the house revealed its secret. Behind one of the walls, there was a hidden space, an old crawl space or perhaps a forgotten storage room. Although I felt fear gnawing at the edges of my mind, I was determined to uncover the mystery. I found a thin tool to pry at the crack, and after a few moments, the crevice widened enough for me to slip my hand through. My hand encountered something cold and metallic, a small box wrapped in what felt like layers of aged, crumbling fabric. As I pulled it out, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Temperature plummeted, and I swear the entire house groaned in protest. Suddenly, as if awakened by my intrusion, a loud crashing sound echoed from above. I bolted out of the crawl space, nearly dropping the box. I sprinted up the stairs, my heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just disturbed something that was better left alone. I searched upstairs, checking every corner and every crevice, but I found nothing out of place. Only the soft echoes from the empty rooms. When I finally returned to the living room, I exhaled deeply, only to find the box wasn't there anymore, like it never existed. Still, in the pit of my stomach, a dark certainty began to take root. This house sucks, and I wish I'd never moved here. In the following days, I began noticing more, irregularities. The walls hummed with faint whispered voices late at night, like memories of half-forgotten conversations and murmurs that sent my mind spiraling into paranoia. I tried recording the sounds on my phone, convinced that there was an explanation rooted in the house's history, but every time I hit play, the recordings were nothing more than soft static with odd, stuttering pauses, almost as if the voices were trying to evade capture. Sleep became elusive. I found myself pacing through the house in the dead of night, haunted by sounds and fleeting shadows. My sense of isolation grew as I tried to piece together this phenomenon. My friends said it was just an old building with peculiar quirks, but something deep inside me rejected that. One afternoon, I decided to visit the local historical society. After a few hours of combing through dusty archives and faded photographs, I uncovered an unsettling story. A family had vanished mysteriously from a property in the area a few decades ago. Rumors suggested that the house was cursed, one in which dark secrets were sealed behind its walls, whatever that means. As if the structure itself was a prison for some kind of malevolent force. I didn't really understand. The more I delved into the history of my home, the more obsessive I became. Late at night, I found myself scribbling down every eerie detail in my journal. I even set up a small workstation in one of the bedrooms, complete with recording devices, notebooks, and even an infrared camera. Determination began to replace fear as I resolved to document every anomaly, every creak, every whisper, every goosebump that this house had to offer. One night, as I monitored the infrared footage, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A figure, not more than a shadow, scuttling along the corridor behind me. My heart leapt into my throat, and I whipped around, but nothing was there. Only empty silence. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, but the sensation of being watched kept gnawing at my mind. The recordings grew increasingly unexplainable. Every time I played back the nights when the humming voices echoed, I heard a distinct sound. A slow, deliberate tapping. The sound would build up gradually in each recording until the audio would just cut off. One stormy evening, as the rain battered the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, I decided to confront the mystery head-on. With my recorder in one hand and a makeshift toolkit in the other, I headed back to the wall where I'd found the secret crawl space. The corridor seemed darker than usual, and each step felt heavy, loaded with the weight of my own anxiety. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the narrow hallway, which looked even more sinister than I had remembered. My hands were shaking as I approached the wall. The hidden crevice still looked unremarkable, yet I knew it concealed more than just a forgotten box. With a deep breath, I inserted a thin tool into the crack, carefully prying it open wider this time. The wall moaned as if in pain, and behind it, a much larger space was revealed. A narrow passage that stretched into the darkness. Just as I began to step into the passage, the temperature dropped dramatically, and I heard a distant but clear, childlike giggle from deep within the corridor. I froze. The giggle was both innocent and chilling, instantly sending a surge of adrenaline through me. It felt like the sound of a memory long buried, an echo from a time when the house had once been alive with laughter, but now that laughter was twisted into something distorted. I hesitated, my mind urging me to flee, but the insatiable need to find answers held me in place. Gripping my flashlight tightly, I moved slowly into the passage. The beam of my light revealed walls lined with old, peeling wallpaper and wooden support beams. My footsteps echoed ominously as I navigated the narrow space, every sound magnified by the oppressive silence. As I progressed deeper into the passage, I came across a small mirror standing in the shadows. Its surface was smudged with dust. I paused to examine it, and the mirror's surface seemed like it flickered, and just for a brief moment I thought I saw the reflection of a small child standing directly behind me. I spun around violently. My heart seemed like it stopped, but the passage behind me was empty. Then came the sound of a door creaking shut in the distance, followed by a loud echoing thump that startled me enough that I dropped my flashlight and nearly tripped over my own feet. In the pitch-black corridor, panic surged through me like wildfire. I fumbled with my hands, searching desperately for the fallen flashlight, every second stretching into an eternity of terror. When my fingers finally grasped the cold, hard surface of the flashlight, I switched it back on with my trembling fingers. The beam revealed nothing more than endless darkness and empty space, but the terror of that moment left an indelible mark on me. I pressed forward, driven by a mixture of fear, determination, and an almost irrational need to understand what was happening here. The passage finally widened into a small hidden room. The room was cluttered with old furniture draped in dusty sheets, faded photographs, and scattered letters. In the center, nearly obscured by a heavy moth-eaten rug, lay an ordnance chest. My hands shook as I knelt down and reached for it. Slowly, I unfastened the heavy clasp. The lid creaked as I opened it, revealing a treasure trove of personal artifacts. A diary, photographs of a happy family, and letters that looked as though they were written in a hurried, almost desperate handwriting. As I pored over the contents, a horrifying realization began to enter my mind. A family had once lived here, and something terrible must have happened to them. The diary entries told of a disturbing story of despair, isolation, and ultimately loss. The final entry was the most chilling. It spoke of a malevolent presence that had slowly taken over their lives, of a secret concealed within the very walls of the house, and of an unspeakable fate that had consumed them each one by one. My heart pounded in my ears as I imagined the terror they must have felt trapped in a home where every nook and cranny held the promise of despair. That night I barely slept. Every creak, every whisper from the walls dragged my mind back into that hidden room. In a moment of clarity, I realized that the house wasn't just haunted by restless spirits. It was a living archive of its own history, a chronicle of human misery that had morphed into something sinister. I began to piece together the evidence, every inexplicable sound, every chilling touch of air, every ghostly whisper. It became clear to me that the house was reacting to my presence, revealing its objections one layer at a time. After a lot of careful thought and quite a bit of desperation, I decided to set up my equipment in the hidden room. I recorded the room's ambient sounds, hoping to capture something, anything. But as I reviewed the recordings, the rhythmic tapping returned, a persistent, almost hypnotic beat that seemed to match the pace of my heartbeat. Suddenly, during one recording, I heard what unmistakably sounded like a whisper right next to me. "Leave, please." It was a desperate plea laden with sorrow and fear, as if it were spoken by the family who had suffered so much. At that moment, I felt a gentle hand brush against my arm. I whipped around, but again, no one was there. The room seemed to exhale a quiet, mournful sigh, and for a brief second, the atmosphere transformed. Gone was the oppressive dread, replaced by a somber tranquility, as if the house was finally ready to rest. Drawing upon every ounce of courage, I spoke softly into the darkness. "I know your story, and I won't let it be forgotten." The ambient noises subsided, and a profound silence filled the room. In that silence, I sensed a collective release, a weight lifted from the very bones of the house. It was as if the trapped souls had finally found a way to escape the confines of this torment. The oppressive energy that had once pulsed through the walls diminished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of closure and peace. While I couldn't be sure that the malevolent force was entirely gone, I felt a transformation had occurred. The house that was once a prison for sorrow was beginning to breathe freely, for the first time in decades. In the weeks that followed, the nature of the house changed. The strange sounds and the unnatural chills began to fade away. This experience has left an incredible mark on me. I had ventured into the darkness, faced its terrors, and emerged with a deeper understanding of both the fragility and the strengths of the human spirit. I realized that our homes are not merely shelters, but repositories for our histories, our emotions, and our secrets, and sometimes the most frightening parts of our past can, with a little compassion and a little courage, be transformed into a source of healing. Now when I walk through the rooms of my house, I do so with a sense of reverence. I remember the family whose tragic tale unfolded within these walls, and I honor their memory by ensuring that their story is never lost or forgotten. The overwhelming dread and the mysterious whispers have all become part of a larger narrative, a narrative that now includes hope and the possibility of a new beginning.